And now we come to the final session of the afternoon. Our last guests, the headline act, if you like, need no introduction from me. Please give a huge welcome on stage to the tireless, the relentless, the indefatigable campaigners from Wild Justice, Ruth Tingay, Mark Avery and Chris Packham.
It's been 10 years since the first Hen Harrier day. 10 years, that's quite a long time. Some people say we haven't really achieved much in those 10 years. I think they're absolutely wrong. It's good to be impatient for change. I'm impatient for change. But change comes quite slowly, even when it's coming really quickly. If you'd all voted for Jeremy Corbyn a few years ago, we might have had more change. But one of the lessons I've learned in being in advocacy and campaigning for quite a long time is that it always feels as though you're losing. And it always feels as though you're losing if you're on the other side as well. In any conflict, both sides think they're losing because they haven't yet won. We're not losing, but if I owned a grouse moor, I'd think, blimey, things have really changed in the last 10 years. You look at the papers on Monday and what they say about driven grouse shooting, they won't look remotely like they would have done 10 or 11 years ago. Grouse shooting is under pressure, and it's under pressure from all sorts of places, but one of those places are people like you, and to some extent people like us. There's people like you. So if you were a grouse moor owner, you'd think, crikey, there are all these people, they keep moaning about what we're doing. They say it's not sustainable. They say we're emitting lots of carbon. They say we're causing floods. They say shooting a load of birds for fun is a bit of a crummy hobby anyway. They say that the bycatch of killing predators like stoats and foxes is unacceptable. And they seem to say that killing protected birds of prey shouldn't be allowed. What a nerve these people have. But you would look at what was happening and think the world is changing and it's not changing in the direction I'd like it to. And then you'd look above the border in Scotland and you'd see that there is real change happening there, real change with grouse moor licensing and licensing of muir-burn. Now, some people sometimes say to me that politics doesn't really matter, it's got no place in nature conservation, and that all politicians are just the same. The reason that that has all happened in Scotland isn't actually because the case is any stronger in Scotland. I think it's slightly weaker. It's very strong, but it's slightly weaker. It's because there's been a different party in government, one that was open to the idea of radical change. Do you remember the Conservatives? So we've been around for quite a long time. They were not in favour of radical change on this subject. But now we've got a Labour government. Well, I'm not sure it's going to be that different, but it is a new opportunity to get radical change. I would still like to see a ban on driven grouse shooting. Not some tidying up of the rules, but a ban. And it sounds like you would too. So when the petitions committee is up and running again, which might be September time, I'm pretty sure you might see a new petition for banning driven grouse shooting. The first time there will have been one under a Labour government. And our aim will be to get that petition to 100,000 signatures in double quick time. In fact, it would be great to get it way past that subject to make the point. And we will be coming back to you to ask for your support. But you've given us loads of support in the last 10 years. Thank you for that, and let's keep going. Over to Ruth.
Hello. How many of the sodden 570 are here? Put your hand in the air. That's brilliant. That's quite a few of you. Welcome back. I thought we were going to have another sodden day, but it's turned out okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Hen Harriers because this is the 10th anniversary of Hen Harrier Day. Hen Harriers, as many of you will be aware, some of you might not be aware. So for those of you who aren't aware, Hen Harriers are probably the most persecuted raptor in the UK. They're mostly killed on grouse moors by gamekeepers because gamekeepers perceive them to be a threat to their red grouse stock. There's been a long campaign to stop them killing hen harriers, and in 2018, the Moorland Association, which is the grouse moor owners' lobby group, they put out an announcement to say, okay, there won't be any more killing on grouse moors, and we're going to do this thing called brood meddling. It was a bit of I don't know how to describe it politely, really. The idea was that the government would remove some broods of hen harriers from grouse moors and then rear them in captivity and release them elsewhere away from the original grouse moor. And in return, there was this kind of gentleman's agreement, which wasn't written down anywhere, obviously, but the gentleman's agreement was if you can remove our hen harriers, then we won't kill them. So that was the plan. It was set up as a trial, a so-called scientific trial, which we dispute. So since 2018, since that trial started, I've been keeping track of how many hen harriers have been illegally killed in England and Scotland and Wales, and how many have disappeared in what we call suspicious circumstances. The current figure is, since 2018, is 123 hen harriers are known to have gone missing or have been found illegally killed. And when I say illegally killed, I'm talking about birds being poisoned, being trapped by the legs and battered over the head with a bat. We've heard from some speakers already today about some other cases. There's one bird that was trapped and had its head pulled off when it was alive. There's another one that was carrying a satellite tag. That bird disappeared, but the satellite tag reappeared, and researchers found it attached to a crow. And when you fit a satellite tag to a hen harrier, it sits on a harness. And when they found that harness, the harness was intact. It hadn't been cut off the hen harrier. The only way they could have taken it off that hen harrier is to remove the hen harrier's wings. So whether they did that when that hen harrier was alive or they'd already killed it, we don't know. But that's the sort of thing that's going on. So we're up to 123 that we know about. We've heard this year that there are 5 current investigations ongoing, but Natural England and the police are being pretty tight-lipped about that. I suspect we'll find out more in September after the breeding season. But the point is, it's still going on. It's still going on grouse moors. We know it. They know it. Everybody knows it. The difference this year is obviously we've got a new government, and we'll be talking to that new government quite soon, I think, about this issue. We tried talking with the previous government. Obviously, they weren't interested. Too many vested interests. So let's see what the Labour government has to say. I've just got, if I've got the time, I just want to say something about licensing in Scotland. I read an article this morning, actually, which made me laugh out loud. So there's grouse moor licensing in Scotland, which is great. It's a step forward. The grouse shooting industry hate it. There's talk about them taking legal action against it. I'm not quite sure what angle they're going for, but they are talking about trying to fight it. And there was an article published in The Scotsman 3 days ago, and it was written by a guy called Peter Clark, I think that's his name, who heads up BASC Scotland, the British Association for Shooting and Conservation. So BASC have been opposed to the grouse moor licensing ever since it was first proposed, and they continue, based on what I read 3 days ago, they continue to oppose this licensing scheme. Part of the argument for taking legal advice, according to Peter, is they feel that the number of offences that can be used to revoke a grouse moor licence are too broad. So they're saying not only if you get caught killing a bird of prey, your grouse moor licence is going to be revoked. But they're arguing that if you get caught killing a badger or using dogs to hunt foxes on your land, that's not fair. Those offences shouldn't be in this new legislation because that's not fair. Can you imagine not only thinking that, but writing it in a newspaper column? That's how you're defending your sport. It's not fair. If our members get caught killing badgers on grouse moors, they shouldn't lose their shooting licence for that. I'll end that there. Over to Chris.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ruth. And thank all of you for coming along today. I've had a really nice day. And I hope many of you had too. I've met a lot of really nice people who've said really nice things. And I feel that when we're standing here, we get a collective strength because we're in a like-minded community. We've all given up our time today to come along here because we've got a passion for wildlife and a passion for justice, and we want to see urgent improvements. And when we come together like this, it's a good thing because we embolden ourselves. We reaffirm the fact that we're not standing alone, and there are certainly people here that I've spoken to today who go the extra mile when it comes to confronting the gamekeepers, the fox hunters, the badger cullers, and so on and so forth. They're on the front line of that issue. And we all recognise in wild justice that what we do is a different form of protest amongst a portfolio of methods that we need to make that difference. However, you don't need me to tell you that we are in deep, deep trouble. So the sun might be shining and we might be feeling good, but at the same time, we've got to recognise that we've got to make a difference ever more urgently. You don't need me to tell you that the world's climate scientists have told us that we've got 5 years to make a significant difference now. 5 years, as Mark's alluded to, is not a very long period of time. All of us can cast our minds back just 5 years. We'll know what we were doing, how we felt, so on and so forth. And the State of Nature report published last year tells us that close to home, when it comes to biodiversity loss, we're in one of the worst places in the world. So for all of the love that is mustered here today, for all of the passion and enthusiasm that we bring to this community, we are standing in one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Not least because we're persecuting that nature. We're hunting those foxes and we're killing those hen harriers and golden eagles and goshawks and buzzards and everything else besides. Not to mention the millions of animals which are killed legally in the form of foxes, stoats, weasels, etc. This is us, this is our backyard, the tiny UK. And we know that that data is true because we have generations of able naturalists, many of whom are here today, and I've met you. You know, you've got your fingers on the pulse of everything from woodlice to woodlarks. So we can speak in a very qualified way about the quantity of our wildlife, and that wildlife is rapidly disappearing. Think about your summer. Think about butterflies this summer. Now, some of you, I hope, have done the big butterfly count for butterfly conservation. I can give you some preliminary stats. I got an email from them this week telling me that last year was the poorest ever year. The average number of butterflies per count was 8 point something. This year, and it is preliminary data, so don't take this requires crunching, but this is just what we've seen so far, it's down to 6 point something. And that won't have escaped your notice. It's happening quickly. Things are disappearing very quickly. You can all open your mobile phones now and you can watch fires burning across Canada. You can watch flooding all across southern Europe. The world is changing. So the only way for us to make good is for us to change, to affect those changes. And that's what wild justice is all about. It's about making change as rapidly as possible. And we do everything that we can within our form of legal protest to make those changes. And as Mark has said, unfortunately, even when they're rapid, they're slow. So we've got to speed things up. We've got to make a difference. So how can we do that? Well, we can't sit around being complacent and feeling good. We've got to be angry. We've got to be frustrated. We've got to be sad. We've got to be disappointed. We've got to live in fear. And then we've got to take all of the emotions that they generate and turn it into something positive and something creative. And that's what we're good at. That's what our community is good at. Because what's brought us here this afternoon is not a hatred of driven grouse shooting, of fox hunting, of badger culling, or anything else. What's brought us here this afternoon is a love for that wildlife. And it's that love that we need to use to make sure that we get what we need. One of the things we need to do is to work more closely together. I'm very pleased to say that Adrian and the organisers welcomed Just Stop Oil this afternoon, who turned up impromptu here. And you might be thinking, okay, what have Just Stop Oil got to do with this meeting, which is principally about biodiversity and protecting our wildlife? Well, there won't be any wildlife if the planet's on fire. And again, like many of the other activists here, these people are at the forefront, making sure that we keep those big issues, keeping fossil fuels in the ground, in the news, as effectively as they can. Now, you may not like their methods, but you can't help but support their motives, because they are fearful for their future and they are listening to the scientists. They are merely the canaries in the coal mine that are telling us all the truth we need to hear. The reason they came this afternoon is because 5 of those activists have been sent to jail for disproportionately long sentences, 5 and 4 years. Now, when I say disproportionately, you're going to say, well, that's just Chris Packham's view, and he would say that because he supports some of the things that Just Stop Oil do, and he certainly supports non-violent direct action, peaceful protest. But we haven't been looking at peaceful protests on our news over the last couple of weeks, have we? We've been looking at disgusting, violent riots, the abuse of our police force, the abuse of our vulnerable communities, and open racism. And yet, when I look at my news feed this morning, I see that those responsible are not being sent to jail for 5 and 4 years, but for 3 and a matter of months, or for getting conditional discharges. These people were on a Zoom call organising a peaceful protest and they get 5 years. One man torched a police car and got less than 3. It's a joke. So please, if you have time, will you welcome these people and sign the petition that they have? Because unless we retain that right for peaceful protest as part of our portfolio that we need for change, then I think we're in deep trouble. And one other thing to add to that is that at the moment, it might be about climate protesting, but bear in mind that the laws which are impinging upon our freedoms are there to impinge them upon anything. It could be gender. It could be the right to strike. It could be that we want a better health service or access to cheaper food. It could be anything tomorrow. We have to make sure we overthrow those draconian laws. So please sign that petition. And when we launch our petition to ban driven grouse shooting, not license it, but ban it, please think about signing that. Wild Justice this week has also, in conjunction with the Badger Trust, who are here with us this afternoon, have launched legal proceedings about the badger cull. 230,000 badgers have been inhumanely culled at our expense, and there's been no reduction in BTB. Why have we allowed this to happen? That will be a stain on our reputations for years. But we can, at this point, do what we can to overcome that issue. We've got a new government. We can knock on that door and say, end the cull. And Wild Justice and the Badger Trust will certainly be doing that. And I hope that you will join us too in demanding an end to this complete travesty and cruelty inflicted upon our diminishing wildlife. But signing petitions is easy. We like that because it's easy. We can sign them in a matter of moments over there with Just Stop Oil, or we can sign them online, as you will be asked to do so when we launch our next petition. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. We need your 100,000 signatures. We need to be able to get there and debate this with this government to get what we need. But it's tougher than that. We have to make significant changes in our lives when opportunities arise. And I like to phrase it in that way. I don't like to be confronted by problems. I like to be offered opportunities. And when those opportunities arise, when we are individually in the right place, we can accept them. So here are a couple of things I'd like you to think about doing if they are an opportunity for you. They may not be, but if they are, please think about taking those opportunities to affect the biggest change you can possibly make when it comes to impacting upon climate breakdown and biodiversity loss. Let's go for biodiversity loss first. Now, a lot of reasons why things aren't great in the UK, and the State of Nature report is saying things are pretty catastrophic. Obviously, intensive agriculture, farming policies, forestry policies, overfishing, lack of regulation with all of these things is playing a role. But the single biggest driver of biodiversity loss, not just here in the UK, but all over the world, is agriculture, specifically animal agriculture. Everything from the runoff that's flooding into our rivers and poisoning them, to the loss of more habitat as the population grows and we need more and more of that for farming. But we know that we could feed the world on a plant-based diet for far less space. I'm not asking you to go vegan overnight. What I'm asking you to think about is cutting back on eating any meat and moving in that direction as rapidly as possible. That can transition. And that's what we need, a transition. We have to support our farmers through that transition. And for a transition, we need patience, as Mark has said, and we need kindness. And if we employ kindness, then I think we can nurse them and us and everyone else through that transition. So please, if you care about the world's wildlife, one of the things that you can do most significantly, because you're lucky to have a choice, is to choose what you put in your mouths when you eat. Please think about eating less meat or no meat. I don't imagine many of you are going to be rushing to get the paint and the powder and the glue out to join my friends at Just Stop Oil. I don't imagine too many of you are going to want to be gluing yourself to anything or maybe getting arrested. So what can you do when it comes to impacting and protesting against the fossil fuel giants which are killing our planet? Well, there's one simple thing that you can do. And it's the single thing that you can do which will have more impact than anything else. It's not buying an electric car. It's not cycling. It's changing your bank account. If you bank with an ethical bank that doesn't invest in fossil fuels, in weapons, and in poverty, that's how you can make the single biggest difference to your carbon footprint. So unless you're banking with an ethical bank, you could go home this afternoon and in the space of a few minutes online, on an app on your phone, you could transfer your money away from investing in a dead planet and invest it in a planet with some hope. Please think about changing your bank, your insurance, and your pension. Those are the 3 things you can do that will make the biggest difference. We bank with Triodos at Wild Justice. Other banks are available. There's a website called Money Tree. If you go there, it tells you about which other banks that you can use. I have to say, there are some limitations with those banks. They may not fit the way that you do your finance, but there will be others. And there's a tier of who's the most ethical. But if anyone here is banking with Barclays, then I suggest you stick your head in a bucket of fuel and set fire to it, because you're burning our planet down, and it's time to put this stuff behind us. So to conclude, thank you for coming. Thank you for making me and us feel good. I hope you feel good yourself, but most of all, I hope that you feel empowered to make a difference and that you are ready to start making that difference today. Because, as we've always said, for too long in conservation, tomorrow is too late. And the world will be lost by a lot of good people doing nothing. So please do something. Thank you.
Thank you.